the abolition of Section 24, which is huge for property investors, and other policies that have been suggested by the three main parties competing to win the general election in July. Now, I say three parties, really. Obviously, it's the Labour, it's Conservatives, and it's Reform, who've never actually stood in a national election before. So what I've done is I've looked at the manifestos for each of the parties. I'm focusing on the main areas that they're talking about with regard to property, because housing is a big thing that's being debated. We've less than 2 weeks to go to the general election. And I really would encourage you to look at the manifestos, listen to the debates, because this is a really important election. And there are some key things that are going to have a significant impact on us as property investors. So I'm going to talk about each of the parties in turn, and also where there's a bit of a crossover and also contradiction as well. So first of all, let's talk about Labour, who are probably, in my view, probably going to win the general election. No one knows, and I'm not stating who I'm gonna vote for. In fact, I don't know who I'm gonna vote for yet, but I have a feeling they're probably going to win. And in their manifesto, which is a very long, wordy manifesto, their whole theme, they keep on repeating, is stop the chaos and turn the page. So let's talk about some of the things that they are looking to do with reference to property. Now, everyone is talking about a planning reform, and a planning reform is desperately needed. And Labour have made it very clear that they intend to build 1.5 million homes in their parliamentary term, expected to be 5 years. Okay, so that's 300,000 a year. Now that's actually more than we've been doing over the last 10, 20 years or so. We normally do a couple of 100,000 a year. So I don't quite know how they're going to do that, but these planning reforms are one of the ways. Now, one of the things I think Labour have actually got very, very right is they've committed to add more planning officers in local councils. That is a real problem. There's just not enough planning officers and people with enough experience to actually deal with all the planning applications coming through. So it takes a really long time in most areas for planning to come through. So I think it's a really good thing they're doing. I'm fully in favour of that. They also talk about fast-tracking brownfield sites. So brownfield is where you've already had some sort of building there. Could be a pub, could be an office, could be whatever it is, as an existing building to be repurposed to make more accommodation. Now, that's nothing new about that. All the parties are talking about that, but it's certainly something they're talking about. And the Labour are very keen to protect the green belts, and they're talking about this grey belt land, which is not such good quality. I'm not really quite sure what that is, to be honest, but they're making a big feature about that. Now, interestingly, they're also encouraging developers to provide more affordable housing. When you do a property development, depending on the size of it, you have to provide a certain amount of it towards affordable housing. Now, that property is property that's not going to make so much profit for the developer, so they don't like doing it. They're kind of forced to do it. And if the Labour Party want developers to do more and more of that, a higher percentage, I wonder, are developers really going to want to do development if they're not making as much money? And so there's a fine balance here. If Labour need all these extra houses, are they going to put developers off, which is going to be a real issue? Labour are also looking to review the right to buy schemes. Now, if you've lived in a council property for a long period of time, you can buy that at a big discount. I think that was introduced years ago by Margaret Thatcher. It's been very, very popular, and many people have taken that and become homeowners, very much a conservative policy. However, Labour are looking to review that. So if you live, or you know somebody who lives in a council house and they've got a right to buy, my strong recommendation would be get on with that, because that might well be disappearing with the Labour Party, or certainly going to adjust that. Also, one thing I saw in their manifesto, which I thought was very interesting, I'm not quite sure how they're going to enforce this, but they were saying they want to end the policy where lots of new build properties are sold off plan to foreign investors and local people don't get a chance to buy those properties. Now, I don't quite know how they're going to do that. They talked about increasing stamp duty for overseas investors. They already pay an extra 2% as an overseas investor rather than a normal investor. I think they're looking to put an extra percent on that. I don't think that's going to put people off that much if they want to invest here. But that's interesting. They're kind of trying to stop that. And also they're doing help for first-time buyers with a mortgage guarantee scheme as well. So actually, I think there's lots and lots that Labour are talking about. Housing is a real issue. Some of the things are similar to the other parties, but also some things are the total opposite. Now I'm going to talk about Reform. Now, Reform is a new party. I actually think that the Reform Party are probably not so much a threat to Labour, who are well ahead in the polls, but Reform seem to be about the same position as I filmed this video as the Conservatives. So I think actually the Conservatives are going to lose potentially a lot of seats to Reform. Now, when it comes to property, again, they're saying they want to review the planning process and they want to fast track brownfield sites, which all the parties are talking about. They also say, which is a bit controversial, they say they want to reform the social housing law. And in their manifesto, they say they want to change it where foreign nationals have been given priority. They want to put them to the back of the queue. So I think they're talking about people who are coming in, immigrants coming in who are not nationals of the UK. They're saying, well, really, they should be the bottom of the list to get housing, which is a bit of a controversial topic maybe, but I think that's going to get a lot of votes from people who are very fed up with the immigration that's happening into the UK. But the really big one, the massive thing that the Reform Party have said, and I think there's going to be a huge vote winner, particularly pulling some people who are landlords who might have traditionally voted for Conservative over to Reform, is the Reform Party have said within 100 days of them getting in power, they will abolish Section 24. Now, Section 24 is something that George Osborne suggested, first tabled in 2015, and it came in April 2017. It was phased over 4 years. And what it means is if you own property in your own name, which the vast majority of investors do, and if you have a mortgage, which again, most investors do, and you're a higher rate taxpayer, which not all, but many property investors are, you end up paying a lot more tax. This is why so many more people are now buying property in a company structure, because in a company, you can offset all of the interest against your mortgage to reduce your tax. You can't do that as an individual if you own property in your own name. But if Section 24 is abolished, it will go back to maybe owning property in your own name. Now, I'm not sure people will convert from a company back to their own name. You know, I think that once it's set up, it's set up. But actually moving forward, that's going to be a very interesting thing. And I think that will get a lot of really frustrated landlords probably voting for Reform. And the other thing they've said they're going to do, they're going to abolish the renters reform. This bill has just been put through. It was rushed through, really. I don't think it was quite adequate. They said they're just going to get rid of it. So some really interesting thing from the Reform Party there, who I think have a really good chance of, I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to damage the Conservative Party. Now let's talk about the Conservatives. And again, they've talked about they want to have this planning reform. So something I read in the Conservative manifesto I was very surprised by, they are pledging to build 1.6 million homes in their parliamentary term. That's 100,000 more than the Labour Party. I'm not sure if they've done that deliberately or just that's where their figures are. But for years and years, the Conservatives say we need 300,000 homes a year, which is obviously 1.5 over a 5-year period. But they're saying 1.6. So that's kind of interesting because they've only created 2.5 million over the last 13 or so years since about 2010. So they've been making, as a country, we're making less than 200,000 a year, but both they and Labour are saying they go up to 300,000 or more. So what's going to happen for this increase in property? Well, they've got a couple of things they're suggesting. First of all, I think this is a very good thing the Conservatives are doing. They're saying they want to abolish the EU rules about nutrient neutral. So you get all these things like phosphates and sulfates, and it's really clogging up the planning system. They're going to scrap that, and they believe that's going to allow an extra 100,000 homes to be built. So in the first year, that's definitely going to help a lot of properties to be built. But here's the problem. All these parties are talking about, well, you know, we're going to build all these homes. We don't have the labour. We don't have the materials. You know, when Brexit came, unfortunately, loads of really skilled workers went back to Europe. So this is going to be a real problem. Now, they can obviously create new jobs. They can do apprentice schemes. But do people really want to get into the building trade? I'm not sure they do. The other thing they've said, which again is a really big tick for the Conservatives, they said they're going to lift the 106 requirements for smaller developments. So this is when you do a small development, as I said earlier, you have to provide some of that generally as affordable housing. If they're going to scrap that, they'll make it more profitable and it will encourage developers to do smaller developments. So I think these are things that really will help them move towards their target, whereas I'm not so sure some of the things that the Labour Party do are going to help them hit their 1.5 million. Also, they talk about fast-tracking brownfield sites, and they make a big point about they want to protect the green belt. And Labour in their manifesto, they have a bit of a pop at the Conservatives, saying that, they've not had a very good track record of protecting green belt. A couple more things that the Conservatives are doing that I think are quite good. They're saying for first-time buyers, they're going to raise the stamp duty level. So at the moment, if you buy a property under 300,000, there's no stamp duty. First-time buyers, they're raising it up to 425, and I think that will help more first-time buyers get on the ladder because it's reducing the upfront costs that they incur on properties up to 425,000. They're also saying they're going to help with the Help to Buy scheme, which I don't think has been great so far, to be honest. They're going to give loans on new build properties, which will be kind of subsidized by developers. But I don't think buying a new build property is actually a great investment. I guess if it's a first step on the ladder, it's okay, but you're always buying at a premium anyway if you're buying new build. I tell my students not to buy new build properties. So, I don't think that's really helping people. And they're also talking about this permanent mortgage guarantee as well. So they're moving in the right direction, but I'm not sure they're really kind of focusing in the right way. So one final point in the Tory manifesto that I thought was quite interesting, but I'm not sure how effective it's going to be, is they're saying there's going to be a 2-year temporary capital gains tax relief where a landlord sells a property to a tenant. Now, that sounds quite good, and maybe it's going to help some tenants get their foot on the ladder. It's something I've suggested to tenants in the past. There have in the past been mortgage companies who've been prepared to accept a 5% gifted deposit from a landlord, which means the tenant has to put less money in to buy the property. And when interest rates are lower, sometimes people could actually buy a property and their mortgage would be less than the rent. So it was really good for people to get them on the ladder, but I didn't have any of my tenants take up that offer, which I did make a few times. But now, they're saying that if a landlord sells a property to a current tenant for a couple of years, there's going to be no capital gains tax. So that might encourage more landlords to want to sell their properties to those tenants. The question is, are the tenants going to be in a position to actually buy? An interesting thought is, what if you got an option on a property? So you get an option on a property for 2 years, and then you're technically the tenant on that, I suppose. And then you then buy that property from that landlord. Well, does that mean they're going to not have to pay their capital gains tax? That might be a really strong reason to get people to agree to options. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some small print around this, but again, it's just a creative thing. We have to wait and see when these things come out in detail. And also, we don't know which of these parties are actually going to win. So I would encourage you to look at each of the manifestos. This is a really important election. I think Labour are probably going to get in, but don't assume that's the case. Work out whoever you want to vote for. Go and cast your vote. That's why this country has gone through a number of world wars, so we all have the right to vote. So please use your vote wisely, but make sure it's an informed vote. I'm personally going to be listening to the political broadcasts. I'm going to be reading the manifestos again, because how we all vote is very important, and there are going to be some significant impacts for us as property investors. So I do hope that video has been interesting and useful to you. Please do like the video. It helps the algorithms, and if you've got any questions or comments, put them down below. I'm going to make sure I come on and answer it. So who do you think is going to win, and why do you think they're going to? What do you like and what don't you like? Do come and comment below. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell icon, so whenever videos like this, relevant content, up to date, comes out, you're one of the first people to see it, and you can obviously benefit from getting the up-to-date insight on what's happening. The other thing I'd recommend, if you want to keep up to date with what's happening at very much a grassroots level all over the country with other property investors, if you haven't been, I highly recommend you come and check out one of the Property Investor Network meetings. Now, if you've been before, you know how great they are. If you haven't been, I recommend you come so you see what you've been missing out on. It's a great opportunity to meet other like-minded people. Now, that's really important, because if you're trying to invest in property and no one around you has ever done that, your friends, your family, your work colleagues, they're not going to understand what you're trying to do. They're probably not going to give you the support you need. You need to get around like-minded people who understand what you're trying to do and are going to champion you and encourage you to do that. You also get to hear from some of the top successful investors in the country. What are they doing? How have they done it to inspire you, build your belief for what's possible? We have updates on regulations and finance, etc. So get yourself along to a local PIN meeting. We'll put a link below this video, but you can go to pinmeeting.co.uk, Property Investor Network meeting, PIN meeting.co.uk. Find your local meeting. They're all over the country, and also in the Netherlands and also in Dubai as well. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the meeting you want to go to, check you can do the date and time. They're always in the evening. And when you come to book, if you've never been before, click where it says pay with a voucher code. And you can actually use the code YouTube. Use the code YouTube. You will bypass the payment page for the first time only and come at no cost, no risk, just to come and see for yourself how amazing the PIN meetings are and how they're going to help you with your property investing. So I would encourage you to do that. Take action right now. Come and click on the link below and come and find your local meeting and book in and come and see what you've been missing out on. So we're going to watch what's going to happen in the election. Who knows what's going to, I have no idea who's going to win. I think it's probably going to be Labour, but who knows? We look interested to see what happens, but it's definitely going to impact us as property investors. So your vote is important. Please make sure you vote. That's it from me. As ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.